I don't want to pay my business coach, who's 5 times more expensive than my therapist, to talk about my feelings. But here's the reality. They're
Right.
all interconnected. It's all a web. To somewhat discover life coaching, even though I thought life coaching was bullshit at the time, because I think most therapists do, because it's like, I have a 6-year college degree, you have a $25 certification with no credential. And there's a little bit of arrogance in there, but the way that I'm hardwired between sort of neurodivergent and ADHD and sort of, and dopamine seeking and these, that I have to learn by sort of like breaking something and putting it back together. So for any of you listeners who might be aspiring entrepreneurs, don't do what I did, is I thought the money was going to keep coming like that. Not only did I think it would keep coming like that, I thought it would continue to get better. And then by the 4th month, I pretty much couldn't pay my bills.
Hello, sir. How you doing?
Hello. I'm doing good. I just got off a client call, said goodbye to my daughter, and here we are. He was the big guy himself.
Yeah, I feel like it's this is the life these days. I have another podcast recording this afternoon, and I basically pick my son up from the bus, and we slide right in, and then we record, and then we end it, and we slide right out, and we go to tutoring.
Yeah.
Well, amazing. Well, thanks for
Love it.
taking the time and jumping in. I enjoyed our last conversation so much. It was first time we got to talk, but I enjoyed it so much that like half of me during that conversation was like, wait, we gotta save this stuff for when we talk on the podcast. I think, when we spoke, I love, and I want to get into to your background. What we typically focus on from a content perspective is the idea of zero to especially the entrepreneurial journey. I love the book and I like the idea of 0 to 1. It's the one part that sort of gets me. I'm in that place where I'm like, I don't know what that is. I don't know what that exactly means is. And so, I've really enjoyed having guests like yourself on and really talking about what that journey looks like and what you're sort of even from the moment when you sort of switch from what we would consider like a traditional job into the entrepreneurial journey, um, what you've seen and faced and how you've battled that, and also your unique perspective as a therapist and a business coach, how you see others sort of tackling that as well, and what your advice would be. So, I guess to kick it off, I'd love to go back to sort of your history, both from a career perspective, in the maybe making the jump from traditional to the entrepreneurial journey.
Sounds great. So for me, the making the jump from traditional work to entrepreneurship was something I don't think anybody's ever prepared for, unless you already know people or are in some form of
Mhm.
entrepreneurship within your own family. And it's a very weird reality, right? Like, I was very used to having this set income that was always gonna be there, and then if I needed more money, I could take overtime, and it's a very safe, secure, and easy kinda thing. And then when you become an entrepreneur, you don't know where anything's coming from ever. Like, it's like you threw a million things in the air, and you're hoping you could catch at least one of them.
Totally. And I'm sure that's some of the fear of people jumping into it too, is that, and I'm in that place now where like I am pretty I've grown, I will say this, I've grown more and more confident in myself and knowing how to just figure shit out when I need to. But that's one of those things that obviously if you haven't done it and you haven't been faced with that before, then whether or not you can figure it out is a daunting thing.
That's the interesting thing that you just pointed out there, is that people are always seeking a form of certainty in life. And the reality is that there is actually no certainty in life except for the certainty that you create within yourself. Like, you've probably heard this saying before: through God, all things are
Hmm.
possible, right? And it's a very religious saying. And that saying is by usually very devoted or pious people. And it's interesting because what that saying also translates to is that God conspires with me. Now, think about how confident and how much trust you have in whatever endeavor you're about to go in. If you feel that an omnipotent, all powerful being
Yeah.
has your best
Yeah.
interest in heart, that's
Totally.
confidence, right? The The biggest thing that winds up killing entrepreneurs is that they consistently come
Right.
out of confidence. They get fearful when the income dips. They get fearful when they're not sure on client acquisition. They get fearful when something doesn't pull through. And those moments of fear put you in a survival state. And in survival state, especially as an entrepreneur, you're going to get screwed because probably 80% of the time, or at least that's
Mhm.
how I've seen kind of my business, 80% of the time I'm doing crap that doesn't directly correlate to a money making
Right.
activity. Has potential to, but it doesn't actually translate to dollars. And so that's your highest level of opportunity to gain income or gain whatever it is you're seeking is through those creative things. And that needs you to get into your executive functioning, which means you can't live in survival state. And so a massive key to entrepreneurship is creating the internal belief systems and confidence that you need to stay grounded through the ups
Mhm.
and downs of your.
I have felt that so many times, even specifically as we go through a bit of a transition in the story and what we're doing from what we've learned to, let's say, 1.0 to 2.0 of the business in this in between period where it is all still gray. There's no like specific tagline to stand on and say this is the thing. You're sort of in that middle period. Um, I have felt it where even within a day, you can start that day really low and sort of feeling like it's not gonna work and it's not gonna sort of like it's not gonna work out. And by the end of the day, you're like, "Oh my gosh, we're gonna take over the world. This is gonna be amazing." And so that like that roller coaster of sort of emotion based on different things, you know, I have found comfort in I feel like I've sorta had my own agency in between working, like, traditional jobs and stuff like that, so I've sort of been in this a little bit, and I feel like I've had some practice on those mechanisms internally, but also what helps me is being able to have a lot of conversations externally, especially in this remote world, and having, like, advisors and trusted people as objective observers to sort of pull you out of that, and I'll have one of those talks, and I'll leave that talk and be like, "You know what? Yeah, like, this is right. This is the thing we're doing," and but, like, getting those that established kind of framework of support is so key.
I mean, that's one of the biggest reasons that people typically bring a coach in, right? Because if you have somebody that's pretty much unbiased on your side, and I have no vested interest in the company winning or you winning, well, I have an interest in you winning it, right? But in the sense that I want you to get a result you're looking for, as opposed to like, I need you to work and do this because I just gave you $100,000 to
Right.
build a company that I'm betting on. And I think that's where like it's interesting because I've worked a good bit in the startup world, and people will always say, well, the founders should be able to come to the advisors, right? The founders should be able to go to the investors. And it's like, yes and no. They should, but there's some things they shouldn't go to because how do you go to somebody that just gave you a good check? Let's just throw out that number, 100,000 again. Somebody just gave you $100,000 and you're like, yeah, I don't know if I could do that. You can't do that as a
So there
founder.
is that the relationship investors that have been doing this so long that they see those ups and downs and they know where it's coming from. But I imagine you're so right that you can't. You also have to create a bit of that, like both culturally and that what was Steve's reality distortion field around what you're doing to sort of make and create new things because a lot of people have a hard time sort of picturing those new things and so if you go to everybody and tell everybody everything, like, "I don't think this is gonna work," or "I'm having a hard time with this," or whatever, you're gonna get those people going, I told you," which is not what you need in those moments.
Yeah. No, and it's a fine line too, right? Because I've come to find that there are differences between therapy, mentoring, and coaching. And I think that, you and I kind of talked about this in our previous call. And the way that I typically break it down, because I like to do all three, is that therapy is about that awareness component, right? It's about being able to kind of look back at somebody's life and say, hey, like you're clearly struggling with something right here, right now, but like, why? And then once you have that awareness, there's kind of no point to being in the past anymore, right? Like you get that piece that you needed. Now, why are you still sitting there? So now it's like move forward. Then you have that mentorship component where mentorship is more experiential. Your mentor may not have
Mhm.
technicals. He may not have book knowledge. He may not have certifications or degrees or any of that. And to some degree, that really might not matter. But then what you're getting from them is a very specific frame of the world because they're going to tell you what they did that worked and they're going to tell you based on their own belief system, not always looking at
Right.
your belief system or what really fits you, they could just share, well, this is what I did in your shoes. Because maybe they don't know how to navigate you out of that because they don't have any type of classical training. They just were somebody that had a good result and got a good experience. And you can learn from that, but other times it could leave you feeling like maybe it's not applicable or maybe you don't know what to do because you're not them. And then the last component is that coaching piece, where coaching is looking at your present and looking about how you're going to bring yourself forward. How are you going to elevate your standards? How are you going to evolve? How are you going to grow? How are you going to change as a person or build your company or whatever the case may be? And so what winds up being very interesting is like I found that advisors, some of them could be pretty good coaches. Most of them have mentorship components. They have like those pieces of I'm going to share my experiences with you because I've been there, done that, but that's not always applicable. And then you have maybe a trusted group of friends, and they always have your best interest at heart. And maybe they're seeing things without that unbiased perspective, which would give
Right.
you better answers and better realities, like therapist or coach. And so I think that it's really good to understand like there's so many different people that make a life or a business in, I would say come full circle. And it's about analyzing like who do you need and in what moments because there's different time periods for every different thing. Like and how you build that obviously is ultimately always up to you. But I think to the listeners out there, if any of you are wondering about who you need, you just got to kind of look at what you're actually missing. Like, are you missing clarity? Are you missing experience or are you missing a path forward? And that should kind of tell you like who
Yeah.
you really
No, totally. And I think there's something so interesting there about like, myself, I have had business coaches and mentors, and I've also done therapy for years and years and years. And I think it's one of those things that like having them sit on opposite sides, especially when you're going through this entrepreneurial journey, just doesn't work when you're sort of going to one person and saying like emotionally, I feel like I'm in this place. And personally, and from a I don't know a better way to say it, but the way that I'm hardwired between sort of neurodivergent and ADHD and sort of, and dopamine seeking, these like the way that I'm sort of and that I have to learn by sort of like breaking something and putting it back together, that you go to someone in this
yeah.
way and you talk about those things and then you leave, and later that week you go to someone else and you say like, how do we increase user growth and how do we do these things, and why am I struggling to sort of do X, Y, or Z, or why am I struggling to sort of lead the team? To have those on disparate ends of the spectrum is hard, because I could see such a benefit in this, in the sort of the same person being like, I get why personally between either neurodivergency or ADHD or other things like that, you may be scattering yourself so much, which is why you are putting your finger in too many pies on this side, which is why you're failing on this other side. And being able to sort of make those connections versus having those two things be separate, and not having this same person being able to reconcile that themselves.
Come to find so like to the point of why I started doing what I do is because I really just like any startup, I don't know if I'd consider myself a startup, but I consider myself trying to build something that's different and unique. Because like any startup, it gets made because you see a gap in the market. And to your point, there's a problem where you're going to go to your therapist and you're going to talk about X. And then you're going to go to your coach and you're going to talk about Y. And then you see your mentor and you're going to talk about Z. And you're trying to tackle three different experiences without anybody having a
Right.
full scope or picture of you, your problem, your situation, and everybody's lacking a fundamental understanding of you. And now some people would say, well, that's great to have it separate. Like, I don't want to pay my business coach, who's 5 times more expensive than my therapist, to talk about my feelings. But here's the reality, they're
Right.
all interconnected. It's all a web. And so when you have this, it actually winds up costing you more in the long run because one, now you spend
Right.
3 hours, an hour with each person. You're probably spending more time because you're more money because you're at least paying the therapist and the business coach, maybe or maybe not the mentor unless they have equity in your company or whatever. And that still costs something. And then nobody, again, like I said, nobody has the full story of you. So it winds up being something that you're probably, even if you're getting results, you're probably
Right.
not optimizing it. Right. So now it's like an efficiency issue because your coach might be digging into something and they have no idea
Right.
why you can't move forward. And then they ultimately have to pause the coaching thing to start doing almost a therapy thing with you. Because let's be real, if the coach is good, they should be able to take you back there. But then there's a lot of coaches that are hesitant to do that because they're not trained to be
Yep.
therapists and they stay away from it. And then you're going to go to your therapist and they're just going to kind of keep you in your past. And they'll say, well, this is where you're struggling, but they're not giving you a strong, concrete action plan to move forward. And now you're just trying to do two different action items or three different action items. And it ends up
Totally.
such an interesting mess. And so my thing is like, can we get more people trained to actually do all three? Can we get more people that are capable of providing a holistic, very linear, but somewhat
Mhm.
able to ping pong if you need to? And that's kind of what I do now, right? Is like I'll have a client session. Actually, great example. Last week, one of my clients, we were talking about how he could structure a business plan, talk to his business partners, potentially separate their companies and, create a holding company. Like we did a whole business strategy session. This session, we talked about something from his
Right.
past emotionally that he can't get over because he recognized this came up and now like we're tackling that. But we could do that as opposed to him saying, all right, let's just talk business. And then when shit comes up, I
When I'm dealing with stuff in my past as I'm trying to sort of disassemble, reassemble my company, there's connective tissue in the middle there that I imagine it's so nice to be able to have someone that has a view of both of those things versus having person A, like therapist A, say, like, here's how you need to tackle that. You need to do sort of more meditation, you need to go on walks, you need to sort of like journal, you need to add all these extra habits to your day while also person B is like, you need to hunker down, you need to do this, you need to do that. And then both are sort of saying,
yeah,
like, you need to spend more time doing these other things versus being able to sort of have a holistic plan that sort of supports both at the same time, I could see.
100%. And you could probably guess because you sound like you get it, Kyle. And for you listeners, maybe some of you have had this experience too, but you could probably appreciate and understand that one, most therapists don't understand the entrepreneurship journey. And most coaches don't understand the interpersonal journey because they're both very specifically trained on one thing. And that becomes obviously another issue. You have no idea how many times I've gone into a company. I've worked with an executive who's like, hey, I want to grow my company. It's like, okay, cool. Let's talk about delegation. Let's talk about putting in systems and processes and bringing in the right people. And then stop doing as much work as you do. Like switch your workload to 20% effort and then start coaching and training your employees to build them as people. And then what do you hit? You hit that they're not hitting our goals, right? And then guess what? I go into my therapist mode and I'm like, okay, let's talk about this. You don't delegate. You're the most important person in your company. If you stop working, the company falls apart. Let's talk about your childhood. And then 99% of the time, when we go back there, we figure out that this person has a fear of a loss of control. They have a fear of not being
People
supported or
pleaser.
not being good enough, and that if they don't rank themselves,
Something said it in
there's
measure that
all
basically
sorts
means
of
that I won't
stuff.
confront the things that I need to confront or something like that, that is the root cause of the other piece. That you can't also just say you need to directly the coach may say you need to directly confront these employees like this and get a handle on that. And the internal you may have someone that internally is sort of like, "Oh my gosh, that sounds like the worst." Like, they're like, "I'm just not used to doing that,"
Yeah,
or I'm not trained how to do that," or it triggers something in me, and so it makes it hard to actually execute against that.
100%. Most of the scaling issues that I've run into, and because I'm a people expert. I know systems, I know processes, but that's not my jam. Like somebody's not going to call me and be like, "Vin, I need you to come in and restructure my company." Could I help with that? I could. Would I say that that's my expertise and you should hire me for that? Absolutely not. Go hire somebody else that really loves and wants to do that. I could support, but I am not the guy for it. But what I can do is I could tell you most of the time you're probably not scaling or growing your company the way you should because there's something deeper internal
Mhm.
that you're afraid of letting go of, whether it's that, like I said before, maybe not being needed. So you make yourself the most important person in the company because if you step out of that, the fear is that nobody needs you and then you're not important. And then whatever that transcribes in your mind as like that you're not good enough and you don't deserve the
Right,
company and now imposter syndrome gets like there's a million things that could happen, right? But that's kind of the interesting component is businesses will never exceed the level of development of the person who's running it. So if you're a
right.
2, your business will never be a 3. It'll definitely never be a 10. And guess what? If it somehow miraculously gets past you, trust me, you'll bring it right back to you. You'll bring
Yeah,
it
yeah.
back down to a 2. If that company you hire a
Or the company
consultant, your consultant's a 10, he brings it to a 7,
or the company
you'll bring it
approaches you
back
and
to a
goes,
2.
"Thanks for all you've done, but we're an 8 now, and we don't need a 2." Totally.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
I wanna go back to I really loved when we were talking about your journey from, from being a firefighter and making the jump. I'd love to hear sort of that early, like, how you got into firefighting and then also the journey from firefighting into therapist and business coach.
Yeah. So I'll create the linear path is that I was a therapist first, and I was basically doing therapy since I was 18. I worked started at a hospital as a mental health worker, and I was pursuing my bachelor's degree in psychology. And I was co-facilitating and leading therapeutic groups alongside psychiatrists and psychologists and basically helping along with that process. I would come up with ideas, I would introduce them into the groups, try to get it was a clinical program for children. And so we would get them talking and we'd start doing things like art therapy, whatever the case. So really I was
Mm.
practicing unlicensed but supervised as a therapist since I was 18. And so from 18 to 28, I did both pre and postgraduate different kinds of experiences. And I had worked in inpatient, outpatient, hospital clinics, homeless shelters, private practice, Department of Education. I did applied behavioral analysis. I was a traveling home therapist. And so I did all of these different things within the fields. And I kind of felt like therapy wasn't really as helpful as everybody likes to say it is. I started feeling like it's kind of a business model and that maybe it's not really here to help people get better because I think one of the biggest lies is like, hey, yeah, just come to therapy for 20 years every single week and take this medication. And like, you never get over your problem. You just learn how to deal with it better and like cope with it better. And of course, you're on
Mhm.
the meds, it helps you. And uh, I just don't believe in any of that anymore at all. I refuse to diagnose people. I don't believe in medication. I am a very firm believer on that, especially as somebody who was formally diagnosed in a therapist office and they wanted me to go on medication. I was diagnosed with depression, anxiety, and panic disorder, and I struggled very heavily with suicidal ideation and self harm. And these were all things that I distanced myself from because I don't believe them to be true. And I believe that labels hurt people more than help them. So as I started getting disenfranchised with therapy, I started looking for a better way. And this led me uh, to somewhat discover life coaching, even though I thought life coaching was bullshit at the time, because I think most therapists do, because it's like, I have a 6 year college degree, you have a $25 certification with no credential. And there's a little bit of arrogance in there, but it is a kind of contention
Mm.
point between therapists and coaches. And so I heard Tony Robbins talking one day and I was like, this guy's amazing, but he's amazing because he's actually talking about therapeutic principles and the founders of therapy. He's not like sitting here telling you, hey, come up with an action plan. He's actually saying like, you know about the human needs and that how your behaviors work. So like,
Yeah.
oh, this guy understands psychology, very interesting. But he also knows things that psychologists don't know because he could help people who have been in therapy for 15 years in 15 minutes. And I found that to be really fascinating. So that piqued my interest in coaching. The fire department, I wound up taking a test. Um, and here's the thing, the fire department was a childhood dream of mine, just like being a
Nice.
those are my two childhood dreams. And I took the test the first time while I was going through my master's and I didn't get a high enough score. And so I couldn't actually become a firefighter. Now, most people don't know this, but in New York, after 29, you can never become a
Oh,
firefighter
wow.
in New York City
I didn't know that.
because you age out. So
Wow.
right, see, most people don't. And so you need to take the test before you're 29, and they only
Oh,
release the
wow.
test every 4 years. So realistically, you probably only have 2 chances to
Right.
take this test before you age out. So the first time, I didn't get it. The second time, I got 103, which put me in the second class. It was number 1217 on the list. With that being said, I decided to take it. And at the same time, I decided I wanted to start building my coaching business. So I started building it part-time. I opened my business in 2019. Um, Started seeing clients on the weekends while I was going through the fire academy. And COVID hit while I was a firefighter, but that allowed me more opportunity to actually start
Mhm.
building my coaching business. Uh, Mostly because the fire department was put on the schedule of 24 on, 48 off because of that,
Right.
that 2 day incubation period. So they actually forced us to be off. Usually that's not the norm in the firehouse. Like most people think you only work 2 days a week, and it's not true. You work your 2 24 hours and
Right.
whatever overtime you
Yeah.
called in for. So it was a lot easier for me to do that because we were outside of the norm due to COVID
That's amazing.
limitations.
And so then you started building your practice, and then what was the moment when you started felt like you got that little inkling that may be time to sort of jump full time into the coaching and therapy as the singular focus?
Hey, I felt like I really liked being a firefighter. Like I think it was a really interesting job. It was very cool. It was
Right.
one hell of an experience. However, I also felt this deep sense of responsibility to my clients. And as I mentioned to you, there's a lot of overtime. I was still a new guy. So I was only a firefighter for a year. And because of that, I was still a probie. And as a probie, you're tasked with coming in the most. You're tasked with being there for every single holiday, being there whenever anybody doesn't want to be there, being
Hmm.
there on weekends and whenever. And one of the issues that I kept encountering was you have these set level of expectations as a new guy, and you want to live up to them because the people at
Yeah.
the firehouse won't like you otherwise. Because let's be real, if you're not playing as a team, why would they feel you're a part of it? And so it was a very big balancing act for me. It was, I'm going to set all of these sessions with clients, and then I'm going to get called in without 24 hours notice to go to the fire department, which is like,
Hmm.
that's pretty normal, right? But then I have to cancel on these people who took time out of their day, who are investing in themselves, who I also have a responsibility to show up for. And the moment that made me realize it was time to leave was, it was a Friday. It was like a Friday night. And, I got, I don't know how many. I think I wound up getting like 4 or 5 clients
Oh wow.
scheduled for that Saturday for my coaching biz. And Friday night, I think at 11 o'clock, mind you, my first coaching client is supposed to be at like 9 a.m. At 11 o'clock, I'm getting a call and a text message saying, "Hey, I want you to come in the morning. I can't go in. You need to go in for me." And I'm just like, there's Well, this was the moment is where I looked at my phone, and this is gonna sound like for any firefighters out there, you're probably gonna think I'm a piece of shit, and that's okay. But I looked at my phone and I put it down and
Yeah.
I pretended I never saw it because I couldn't. I just said to myself, I was like,
Right.
I'm not canceling on all these people again. Like, I'm just not. And that made me realize that if I felt that
Mm.
strongly about what I was doing, that was probably where my heart truly was, which also then made me come to the reality and the acceptance of you're not doing right by anybody. By trying to do both, you're screwing somebody. And you should really leave one of these things, right? You should really leave one of these things and give your 100% to somebody because right
Yeah.
now you're giving your 100% to nobody. So I made the very difficult decision to give up on my childhood dream because entrepreneurship was actually something that I discovered later. It wasn't like a childhood dream. My childhood dreams were to be a therapist and a firefighter. And I felt very called to do what I was doing. So I paced around for a few weeks with the letter of resignation. I had to change the date like 5 times and print out these new
Nice.
letters every time. And I tried to find another solution. I said, "Hey, can I take a leave of absence for a year?" Leave of absence for anybody who's
Yeah.
listening is a year with no pay. And you get nothing. There's no benefits, there's no nothing.
Right.
You're a firefighter, but you're not, right? And after a year, you could either go back or quit. And at first they said they'd give it to me. So I was like, spectacular. I could try and figure out the business and then I could go back to the fire department. However, after about a week, once they submitted that paperwork, they came back and they said, you actually can't take a leave of absence for
Oh.
anymore. So you either need, they're like, we're going to give you like a week to figure it
Get
out.
off the
You can
pot.
have a mental health week, figure it out. That's it. They're like, you can have a mental
Yep.
health week. You can figure it out. And so at the end of the week, I just said, I'm not coming back. I'm gonna go do this entrepreneur thing, and I hope it works out. And maybe it does, and maybe it doesn't. But I feel like I have to do this. And it's funny because people said, "Well, you made that decision knowing you could go back." And it's like, actually, you can't. Like once you leave the fire department, you can't go back. It's not as simple as like reapplying for a job. You have to go through 6 months of
Yeah.
training and go through the academy and all that other stuff. You can't just be like, "Hey guys, I've been out of the fire department for a few years. Mind if I just
Yeah.
jump back in now?" Like, no, you're done. So I actually made that decision to completely leave, knowing I can never go back. And I truly just burned my boats to go for what I
Yeah.
believed I'm supposed to be doing.
I love those moments, by the way, just as a call out. It's either that day when you walk away for the last time or the next morning or whatever. And I mean, everything is sort of fresh and new and possible. And like, also sort of like, I don't know, we're going to figure it out. But like those moments in life where it's just like completely different, your whole sort of structure of how things are and life is completely sort of taken apart and now you're in the process of building a brand new one. So I love those moments. Um, those that's so great though. I love that you were able to also you've been able to do both of your childhood dreams, which is amazing. And but I love that call also that call feels so specific and strong that it just feels kind of like, yep, I just have to I just got to do it. And making that jump is amazing. What date was that like, when you made that jump?
This was actually on kind of the tail end of COVID. It
Okay.
was in 2021 when I left to full-time start a business
Right.
when most people shut their businesses. And, even more funny, my target audience, I didn't really have one. So I just took everybody because, anybody who started a business before knows when you first
Yeah.
start, you just need money. It doesn't matter who. Like,
Yeah.
who do
Yeah,
you work with?
exactly.
Whoever pays me.
People who need to talk about things and people who need guidance.
Yeah. And it's very funny because I keep getting friends send me this video. But in 2021, my coaching business, surprisingly, I didn't know what I was doing and it wasn't doing well. And I was struggling and I was almost kind of ready to give up on entrepreneurship and say, well, maybe I could go back and they'll take me as a firefighter if it's only been a few months, or maybe I could go back and go out
Yeah.
as a therapist and work in an office. And it was scary and it was hard. And I was about ready to quit because I've never faced, even as a firefighter, firefighting was difficult and it was hard and it was rigorous, but I never faced an emotional challenge like, I don't know if I
Right.
could pay my bills this month, or the sense of anxiety that you looked in your account and you have $1 left because you just finished paying your bills and you knew
Yeah.
that you just made it, right? And I've never faced a fear like that. I mean, I went into burning buildings. I went to see help people that were dying. I mean, I've worked with schizophrenics and inpatient units, and I've
Yeah.
never been that kind of afraid before. It was a new feeling. And so, with that being said, before my income got really, really bad, I invested in a business mastery event by Tony Robbins, and I took it, and it was in my home because it was during COVID. And funny enough, out of the 40 something thousand people there, I got called on to do
Oh, wow.
business intervention. And so people now continuously send me this video because it still circulates. They use it as ads. They have it as a training in their program. It's on YouTube, and people be like, "Is this you?" And I'm like, "Yes, that's me. I had no idea what I was doing in business." If you watch it, you'll probably cringe all the way through like I do because he was like, "Who do you help?" I'm like, "People." He's like, "Yes, but what are the problems?"
Oh
All
my god.
problems. Oh man, that's hilarious. Yeah, it was an interesting experience, but it kind of, if we go back to the start of this conversation, it gave me a certainty. How does Tony Robbins, the guy that inspired me to quit therapy and become a coach, that inspired me to believe I could be bigger than I am, how does he call me out of a
Mhm.
crowd of 40,000 people when here's the real experience? He called on somebody else
Oh,
first, the
wow.
audio wasn't working. And they were going to be the last person he did an intervention with. And people that may have seen him do virtual calls, for those of you that don't know, when Tony does the virtual events, he has these giant screens in front of him, but he still can't see everybody. He has to actually swipe
Yeah.
his screens to see people. So that means he picked on somebody else. Their audio wasn't good. And by chance, I just happened to be on the screen that he saw me while he was swiping it and called me out of 40,000 people when I was ready to quit. You can't see something like that and say, "Oh,
Right.
that's just random luck," because I don't believe in that. I truly believe that was God nudging me and being like, "You're not meant to quit.
Right.
Believe in yourself. Here you go. Here's the guy that's literally the best coach in the world who's about to give you a coaching session to tell you to stop being a bitch and believe in yourself, which is what you're supposed
That's those the you get so few of those in life, if any, and those are such great moments. That's amazing.
to." Yeah.
That's so good.
So
So was that like, when was that in the journey? Within the first year of making the jump?
so yes, in 2021, I left at the tail end of 21. I think it was probably
Mhm.
somewhere around October or November. So I did 1 year in the department. And this event, I
Yeah.
believe, was early 22. Now, I could tell you exactly what happened. The first month that I resigned from the fire department, my income, um, my income quadrupled, which was fascinating to me. I not seen that much money in my life. And I was like, holy crap.
Something here.
And so I did the yeah, I did one of the other mistakes that a lot of people that don't understand entrepreneurship did. So for any of you listeners who might be aspiring entrepreneurs, don't do what I did. Is I thought the money was going to keep coming like that. Not only did I think it would keep coming like that, I thought it would continue to get better. So that's where I bought that $15,000 Tony Robbins mastery package, which allowed me to go to the business event. And then the second month, the income was about the same and it went down maybe $1,000. I was like, yeah, that's fine. We'll get another client, it'll be whatever. And then by the third month, my income halved. And then by the fourth month,
Yeah.
I pretty much couldn't pay my bills. And it was good that I didn't do all types of exorbitant spending because I was still somewhat responsible where I didn't like, oh, I'm
Right.
making money, let me go buy a car and this and that. It was really just like, I'm going to invest in my business. I'm going to try and, go to this and do that and blah, blah, blah. But with that, that was pretty much at the low point. Now, my girlfriend at the time, who's actually still my current girl, but she was just, like brand new kind of girlfriend. We were living together despite us being somewhat brand new. It was about 2 years or a year into the relationship at that point. She helped me with bills.
Mhm.
She believed in me. And she said, I believe in you. I believe in your vision. I know you want this. I like you'll figure it out. You will. And I've got your back. Like if you need help, like let me know. And she was still working full time and all that stuff. And so by that fourth month was when this all occurred, and then that kind of reinvigorated me, and then just again, the moments of grace, and then all of a sudden my income, like,
That's amazing.
from there.
Yeah. Those early signals, yeah, you gotta be careful of those. I was actually when I was out in San Francisco, I heard a great talk from the founder of Substack, who when they launched, they had someone come on that had a huge audience and huge newsletter audience that came on early, and almost immediately there was like $100,000 worth of revenue influx. And so, of course, everyone's going, "Signal, signal, this is amazing." And then he said it was like 3 or 4 years before they ever had anything like that happen again. And it's sort of like I think it's so interesting the early signals that you can't take any major wins or any major losses as like as anything. You gotta have at least a good sort of duration and period that you look at everything in the aggregate and make sure that you're not sort of looking for any specific single signal as like this is going to be X because um but that's so great. I love, and so great too that you had the support there from your girlfriend, and then also just having that life moment of that shift of being like, nope, keep going, keep doing it, and then you found your groove. That's amazing. Has it been since that period? Was that over the next 3 years or so?
Yeah, I mean, now it's been interesting. Through that, the market has essentially chose me. So my desire to work with everybody translated to you shouldn't work with anybody. You should work with who you get great results with. And the people that I wound up getting great results with were entrepreneurs, executives, business owners, and organizations like working with the
Mhm.
C-suite and the upper level teams. That translated to referrals and more clients and conversations and things like that. So it's been in a steady growth stage since then, where just continuing like to go out and meet people and have these great conversations that then turn into something, whether it's in the immediate or long term. I've also started a few other businesses. So like I have a boring business. Me and a business partner own a laundromat
Nice.
together. So that's kind of fun. I I do CRMs for people, for companies, like, we have a white
Mhm.
label, go high level agency, so, basically build people's backends for them, and another client of mine, we are in Q1 launching a real estate investment fund, so we're gonna start taking the networks, the connections, the high value people, and bring them all together and build big
Amazing.
things.
That's so great.
That's it.
And I imagine how do you like the diversity of entrepreneurial, like, so different from the single focus as a therapist or as a or as a firefighter into the sort of, multi-focus and sort of not task switching, but sort of focus switching on a regular basis into different things.
Man, I mean, my life is fascinating. I am extremely blessed and very lucky to be someone who gets to support amazing people all day, every day. I mean, that's really what it comes down to, right? Like I get to sit with someone and understand the inner workings of business. So, like as I said before, you wouldn't call me to be the guy to build your business systems and processes and roadmap.
Mhm.
However, I can do that. And the only reason I say I wouldn't be the guy is because I didn't formally learn it. I learned it because I was fortunate enough to work with executives and organizations and entrepreneurs that when they would be bitching and moaning about what their problem is, they would have to explain to me because I didn't understand the terminology. And so I've learned everything I know about business through just absorbing knowledge and information when I'm trying to support these people in what they need to do, because they'll tell me things I don't understand. Like a guy was complaining one time. This was like one of my first executive clients. He's like, I'm pissed. My employees, they're not hitting the KPIs we set for them. They're messing up the data in the CRM. They don't know how to, do client outreach. They're messing up these drip campaigns and the automations. I'm like, damn, that sounds crazy. But it's crazy not because of the fact that they're messing it up. It's crazy because I don't know what the hell you're talking about. You need to stop feeding me acronyms and making me
Right.
I know this stuff because I don't. And that's how I started learning what all that stuff meant. And that ultimately has continued to pour into my knowledge base to now help different stages of growth within companies, because I could take a company now that maybe they're doing like about 5 million or so, and I could basically help
Right.
them roadmap up to 50 million. And then I can help them implement those systems and the processes and the chain of commands. And again, that's not my main function. My thing is I will focus on optimizing,
Mm, yeah.
make sure that the company gets there, but I can give them a very good baseline of how the people should be operating within those positions.
Well, and taking your mentor and coaching and therapy and the experience there and applying that and sort of in the aggregate in a company, right? Yes.
Exactly. And then, to that point too, I've had a very again, I've had a very diverse array of working with clients. I've worked with clients in maybe 20 to 30 different industries. I've worked in multi-billion dollar finance firms, hedge funds, Ps. I've worked in startups from pre-seed or bootstrapping all the way to companies that were funded and raised 5 million, 10 million in their Series A or Series B even. Um, and then I've worked with companies that have 400 employees. I work with companies that have 5 employees. I work with C-suite teams of 15 people down to 2 people. So this across different industries, different experiences, like part of one of the companies that I was helping build the roadmap with, I was able to do that because I'm working in the company that has 500 employees and has hit X revenue. And then at that point, because I really understood all of it, because I'm like
Mhm.
hungry for this knowledge. Now I'm just like, hey guys, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna copy and paste X, Y, and Z because this is how they run it. And obviously there's tweaks along the way, but you should always model what you're trying to build. So in psychology, they call this modeling, is see someone
Right.
who has a result you're looking to get, and then basically model after that with the exception of making tweaks unique to you, your experiences, your industry, or what it is that you need, because you won't always be able to copy and paste, but you can get a
Right.
damn good framework
Yeah.
just looking at how other
No,
people
that's great. And I imagine that experience inside of organizations and building obviously has um, sort of supportive expertise and knowledge when you're dealing with a single individual, and vice versa. That you can sort of empathetically know what it is in an organization as an organism, and then understanding when working with a business leader or an executive on a personal level. So that's so great from a business coaching and therapy perspective. Like who typically is your sort of ideal persona or archetype that you enjoy working with, or that should reach out to you if interested?
I like to be a expert generalist. And what I mean by that is I don't like niching into a specific industry or whatever the case. I like to say I want to work with and I really enjoy working with, and the people who get the best results in our work are intrinsically high performers. If you're somebody who's very used to taking action, maybe you're somebody who's been in therapy for 20 years but feel like it hasn't really helped you. Maybe you're somebody who has a coach but you feel like the coach isn't really helping you overcome your problems. They're giving you maybe some good structure or action plans, but you can't follow through on those action plans. Or maybe you've had a little bit of both and you never really found the best effects from either of them and you want to try something new. And those honestly tend to be my clients, because most people, you don't start working with me, I've come to find, if you've never been interested or
Mhm.
done any form of personal development. Because usually people don't have an understanding well enough of what I do. They'll come in being like, "Oh, well, you're a therapist, so do you take insurance and can I pay you $10 an hour?" Or, "Oh, you're a coach, and I just need help with my anxiety, so an anxiety coach is only $50 an hour, so
Right.
I should probably just pay you that, right?" And it's like, no. But then when you have somebody who's been like, "Listen, man, I've been in coaching and therapy for like 20 years, and I know that there's another level and I'm still missing it somehow." That's the person that wants to talk to me, because I'll come in and I'll say, "Hey, you've been doing this for 20 years. In 3 months, I guarantee we'll get you better results if you're somebody who
Right.
takes action," which is why I say you need
Got
that
it.
high performer to work with me. Because if you put in the work, I could give you that framework or intention.
I resonate with that so much because I think one of the things for me, and I know therapy helps a lot of people, but for me personally, of all the therapy that I ever went to, I always hit this threshold where I felt like we are talking so much, and what I need is I need an instruction manual that says if you go do work on these 4 things and come back and tell me the progress you made, and then we're gonna tweak them, and you're gonna work on 4 more things, and then I can see that sort of incremental, and it never really worked like that. It was always like, "Let's go back again," or "Let's talk about what may be leading to this," or whatever, but I sort of hit that point where I was like, "I just need, like, concrete, actionable things," and that sort of led me to people like you watch like a Dan Coe or an Ali Abdal or the things that like people are sort of working very specific on sort of personal hacking or personal habits or and how you can sort of set these frameworks that you can tell within a day or a week whether or not you're sort of getting better at it. I started to gravitate more towards that where it felt like I can tell
Yeah.
that these habits and these things that I'm putting in place are quantifiable. And because I've been doing this, like I'm sleeping better, I'm less anxiety, whatever. And then I'm like, you know what? This feels more tangible to me. And so I can totally relate with
Lovely.
that. That's a
You know, and I love what you did there because I want to just explain to the viewers something too. Because I've come to find that what's really important is understanding what level you're on in personal development. I believe that there's 3 tiers. The first tier is like, go do as much as you can for free. Don't really make a good investment. Go listen to podcasts, go read books, go get audiobooks, YouTube videos, whatever. It should cost you the barrier to entry is
Mhm.
20 bucks if you buy a book, but most things are free nowadays, right? And why you would do that is because if you're starting to get into personal development, you maybe don't know exactly what you need. So buying a high ticket coaching package doesn't make any sense. You not only can't justify it, you don't know if you'll get a result from it. So there's usually a lot of reservation around signing up for these bigger tiers.
Or if you can implement it as a person.
Tier 2. Exactly, because you also don't know and that just comes back. You
Mhm.
don't know what you need specifically, so it's very hard for somebody to help you get there. I mean, unless you really wanna do that groundwork, right? Tier 2 is look for the communities. You're gonna get more generalized info, but it's now more generalized specific. So now it's like, "Hey, I'm gonna join Vin's community." It's probably a medium to still lower ticket,
Mhm.
barrier to entry, and you're gonna get, like I talk a lot about self-mastery. So you're in my community, I'm gonna talk about self-mastery. The problem is, it's not gonna be specific to you. However, it's helpful because now it's a step in the right direction, and you're now more sure about what you need because now you're more ingrained into a specific focus, but
And
it's
you're
still
and
generalized.
there's a benefit of, like, watching a YouTube video or reading a blog by yourself. It's so different being immersed, even if you're not sort of, like, doing and actioning everything, being immersed in a specific way of thinking that everyone is sort of trying to work towards helps you shape your sort of daily view of how you go about things, which more likely you're gonna sort of you may not be seeing it, but there are incremental updates about how you view the world, which is super helpful as well.
Yep. Exactly, and that's not just the communities, right? In that tier 2, you're talking about events and seminars and workshops and all that other good stuff. The one-offs or the very consistent recurring model, right? And then I'd say tier 3 is the top tier. Tier 3 is when you really know what you need. You know what has worked, you know what hasn't worked. You know what your barriers are, you know what your goals are. Like, you are really dialed in, and now you're like, "I just need the one-to-one." Like, it's great being in Vin's community where Vin is like, "Hey, everybody, today we're going to talk about the 5 aspects of mastery and how you can control everything in your life." But now I don't just need Vin to talk to everybody. I need Vin to look into my life. And this is where you sign up for that really heavy one-to-one involvement of like, Vin, I know what I'm struggling with, but how do I actually really apply it to me? Because now it's going to be like, all right, Kyle, I
Mhm.
see where you're stuck. You're stuck on this specific thing because now I have a better insight into your life. I'm not just trying to keep it broad enough to speak to 100 or 1,000 people. Now I'm like in your life and I'm analyzing it personally to you. And so I tell people if you follow these tiers, like depending on where you are, you'll typically get something out of personal development. But then you have some people that don't really understand personal development and they don't know what they need. And they go straight for tier 1. And then they're like, the coach sucked, the program sucked, everything sucked. And I spent all this money and it was a waste. Or like tier 2, and they're like, I hate this community. And it's like, what'd you even
Right.
join it if you didn't know about it? And so save your money, save your time, save your energy, follow the tiers properly, look for what you need, know what you need, and then
Mhm.
seek out
No,
help.
totally. And I think knowing yourself definitely helps that. I know myself is one of those things that like I have a lot of really good aspirations for doing stuff. but I also will get sort of I'll get pulled in different directions, and so, I am definitely the one that signs up for the personal trainer, prepays for a year. That sort of says, like, it is the forcing measure to be like someone's calling me being like, "You're gonna be there tomorrow at 6 a.m., right?" And it's like, and I'm getting sort of pulled in that direction, whereas I may sign up for a bunch of apps, and I just never find the time to, like, go do it, and so, amazing. Well, this has been so great. I love, I love hearing your journey, and I also love sort of the perspective of being able to find where you might sit on that on those tiered systems as an entrepreneur or someone that's thinking about getting into entrepreneurship, and then obviously knowing that your resources are available between the community and your coaching and sort of where that fits. So, that's so great. What would I guess as the last question, where do you see either specifically your coaching and therapy practice, or sort of as you start to expand out in having other businesses, where do you sort of see yourself in 5 to 10 years in that sort of like, have you now expanded out into, um, you just have a suite of businesses, or do you feel like you're sort of still kind of focusing on any one thing?
Is most likely always going to be my main thing. My biggest mission is to impact a billion lives positively and change the way that entrepreneurs, executives, and organizations view mental health and mental performance. Because I think that that's extremely needed, especially in today's world. Because more and more people are in therapy and they're getting worse and worse results. More and more people are trying to hire coaches and they're getting worse and worse results. Because most coaches suck and most therapists, well, I think they suck too. I'm not. I'm very fair to be, happy to be candid about that. Anybody who wants to add me, please do. With that being said, I really want to build something that like maybe becomes my own coaching certification program where people can learn how to integrate hybrid
Mhm.
aspects of therapy, mentoring, coaching. Um, and I wanna just keep being an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurship is fun to me. I love building businesses. I think it's a great time, especially as I've learned more and more through working with all of these founders and startups and execs and entrepreneurs. It's just more and more fun. Like, it's bigger problems, it's bigger issues in life, it's more stress, it's more high pressure, but to me, that's a fun life. Like, if you guys out there, who are listening, or even you, Kyle, if you've ever seen Suits, one of the famous lines in there is, "Life's like this, and I like this." And that's kinda
Nice.
how I see
Okay.
myself.
I love it. Cool. Well, that's a great place to end it. I appreciate you coming on, and I look forward to continuing conversation.
Amazing. Thanks for having me, Kyle. See you.